Hi YouTube, Dragon Arthur here. Sorry it's been a while that I've done anything with Noble Knights. I realise that most people that have subbed to me want to hear something about Noble Knights, but I'm coming today to you guys with how to build a Noble Knight deck and what's important to keep in mind when building your Noble Knight deck. Now, I've done a lot of work recently just ripping the deck apart, starting anew, or using past ideas and new ideas, trying to understand what the new cards do, especially Merlin, and intertwining their effects with the old card effects and like interactions like Merlin with Lady of the Lake. Not very good. And keeping those in mind and trying to balance the deck out because it hasn't been easy. I've been working a little bit with some of my other mates and mainly the Button Masher. Go check out his channel. He's awesome. He's really good with Noble Knights. I'm sure you'll like it. Like his stuff. Sorry about any proxies I have. Unfortunately, the cards aren't out yet, and I have been bad and haven't made any proper proxies yet. But yeah. So I want to explain to you guys how to build a good Noble Knight deck and the things to keep in mind. Now, to do that, to point out what cards you want and what cards you don't want as much of, I've got 4 categories. I have live, and these are the cards that 90% during the game, 90% of the time during the game, you're going to be able to use. There's only really 2 in the main deck that are Noble Knights. We're not including Reinforcement in the Army at the moment, which obviously is live 90% of the game when you draw into it. At the moment, we're just going on with Madrot and Merlin. They're the only cards in the main deck which 90% of the time, well, not counting things like MST, just going for Noble Knights right now. They are the only cards in the deck which 90% of the time when you draw into it, you're going to be able to do something. They interact with the rest of the deck at almost all times. They'll get you somewhere. They're, unless of course you have really bad deck management and don't realize that that Brothers over here helps with that a lot, or you've just been outplayed really well by your opponent and everything's been banished. You're going to be able to use their effects. So that's where we're going to start, is the live. And the only 2 cards in the deck, like I said, other than Rhoda or other spells like MST, the only cards that are live at all points in the game, at least 90% of the points in the game, are Madrot and Merlin. Next up are the interactor cards. So we got live, interactor, toolbox, and limited or dead. Probably should have mentioned that. Interactor cards are cards that probably about 75% of the time you're going to be able to do something with them. Coincidentally, they actually work very well together, these 2. About 75% of the time you're going to be able to use their effects or do something with them that's useful. Boars, of course, is your main searcher for Gwen and other noble arms and setup. He's absolutely excellent, but if you have 3 in hand, you're probably not going to be able to do too much. Unlike Madrot, which is 3 in hand. Okay, next 3 turns, at least I'm set up in case my field's gone. Boars, not so much. You're going to use his effects probably twice. And unless, of course, you recycle them back with Brothers, you've run out of the ability to use his effect. I mean, you can make him dark and equip Gwen and, pop stuff. You can put Black Lancelot on top of him. But, and the same with Brothers. I mean, he's really, really great. You can normal summon him and special summon 2 other ones out, which gets past a lot except for effect negation. But then you can attack with him if his effect gets negated. At least I believe you can. If not, I'm bad. I'm so bad. And I should know better. I'm pretty sure you can, though. I'm pretty sure you can. His second effect to recycle 3 back is relevant for most of the game. probably the opposite of the relevancy of his first effect, which is special summoning 2 out from your hand, because the 2 from your hand would probably be early game, unless, of course, your opponent has Stellar Knight Trevor, in which case it's probably useful whenever they activate that. And when you can't activate that in middle game, when you can't do much except recycle, or late game, the second effect comes in handy. Though at most times the 2400 defense will be quite handy, and that's something to keep in mind of when you make your deck. Is that its first effect is handy when you start. The second effect is handy mid game, and almost all game 2400 defense in a normal set monster is good, because most of the time when your opponent attacks into a face down, they're going to think it's probably a Shadow card, or at the moment, or it is a Fire Ice Hand. Not that people play them as much, but that's something to keep in mind of. And like I said, about 75% of the time, you'll be able to do something with their effects, or at least 75% of the time. Next, I'm going to go into something. I see a lot of people playing 2 of each of these. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm going to put Gwen in here. Gwen is amazing. I love Gwen, and it has hurt me that, although I don't want to give away my deck profile yet, she has gone down to 1 to the deck. I like her too, because she can still use her at 2, but with the speed of the game right now, and how often you actually be using her effect, the fact that you can't use it more than once to equip, you can use the other ones more than once, of course, but you can't use the equipping more than once. The game is too fast. You'll be using the effect to pop or save your monsters too often, that the relevancy of having 2 is not as much. I mean, don't give me hate for it, because I know there's things like Diddy Crow, but people really aren't playing Diddy Crow at the moment. It gets past D-Fish if you haven't used Borz's effect. I mean, if you use its own effect to pop, then it gets past D-Fish because it's a monster sent to the grave. But yeah, like, it is useful all game, don't get me wrong. It's live all game, but having 3 of them is not live all game. And that's why I have to keep it in this category of toolboxing. To explain this to you, if I start with this hand, so if I start with Round Table, Black Lancelot, Ector, Dristan, and Gwen, there's not a lot I can do. Hell, even if I chuck in a Gwen in there, there's not a lot I can do. If I chuck in a Galahad in there, there's not a lot I can do. In comparison, if I have any 4 of these cards, that's Merlin, by the way. If I have any 4 of these cards drawn into that hand, I can do a hell of a lot more. Now, that's what I'm trying to explain of live and interactor and their toolbox. These are used by these 4 cards, not these 4 cards used by those 5. And that's quintessential for the deck. I mean, with Bedivier's effect being out now as well, I can see some people trying to run 3 Brothers, 2 Dristan, and 2 Bedivere, Bedwyr, but I don't see that working a lot. I mean, it's plausible, but and of course drawing to them. And the last stage we have is Limited or Dead. Now, for now, this is going to represent Avalon. Later, it's going to represent Bedivere, just because I'm bad and I have made proper proxies. But you might say that Peridot has some sort of use, but he really doesn't. He doesn't interact with other cards. The only thing he interacts with is synchro summoning, really. To summon him and leave him on the field, you're not going to get very far. You're going to be sitting waiting on your opponent to do something, and that's not going to work for you. You want to stop your opponent. You want to beat your opponent. Not let your opponent decide whether they want to beat you and have you really sore or just kind of limping away a little bit. These 2 cards are what I call Limited or Dead. Their use is extremely limited, and to start with either of them in that hand, you're going to do nothing. Nothing. And this is the idea of this, is so that we can maximize the usefulness of the cards in the deck and minimize how much we brick. Again, it goes back to the whole 3 Bedivere, 2 Dristan, 2 2 Bedivere, 2 Dristan, and 3 brothers, because of last chapter, which I also have proxied because it's not out yet. Don't worry, I'll be getting it as soon as it comes out in a couple of days for me. But yeah, because of the last chapter, I could see that being more relevant. 2 Bedivere, 2 Dristan, and 3 brothers, but and that's if you're going to run this at 3. But that's another thing I wanted to go into. This card is not live at all points in the game. I mean, probably 75% of the time it's going to be useful, but that makes it an interactor. It's not live 90% of the game. It's live probably 75%. Why? Because if you start in your opening hand and you have 3, you're going to do nothing. You need to have monsters in your grave, and you need to have your opponent have a monster on their side of the field, and you to have none on your side. That is not something that shouts out, I'm live, I'm useful at all points in time in the game. That shouts out something to me saying, hey, you can interact me with the other cards you've got, but you need to have those other cards first. That's why I'll be running this at 2. I mean, like I said, if you run 2 Bedivere, 2 Dristan, 3 brothers, then maybe you could run 3 chapters, but until then. So back to here. Now, again, I'd like to point out that even if I drew into this, or this, I still couldn't make a play off anything. Even if I had all of them, the best play I could make is that. And that's a very limited use. I mean, hell, I could probably go him on top of him. Go Galahad, put High Lancelot on top. But it's... Honestly, if I have that as a hand, even all of them together, I'm going to be sitting on the majority of the hand doing nothing. Nothing. I mean, hell, I could go Galahad, special summon out, Gawain. What would I do? Special summon him out, sack him, get a noble arms. I still do nothing. Well, I can special summon out Ector then by banishing those 2. Great. Well, that makes that more useless. Going to Sacred King, or I could just not banish that out and have 4, and then I send what? He's already in my hand. What do I send to the grave? I send it brothers maybe. It's that's what I'm trying to get at here. That running multiple copies of them, I mean, hell, if any of them I drew into 2 of, I still wouldn't be able to use all of them in my hand. They're not live. They're not useful 75 at least % of the time. That's why I'm trying to say, even if I had 2 of him, 2 Gawains, what, I normal, special, put 2 together, equip Gwen, get another one. I got 2 rank 4s out in the field. Okay, I have no noble arms, so my noble knights are useless. Exiton probably isn't going to happen, especially if I'm going first. Like, the best thing I could do is probably go Stillswarm Road Gandiva and sit on that, or Stillswarm Road Abyss Dweller, but that's not going to get me ahead. And if you're playing noble knights like that, you're going to suffer. And I've done it so many times in the past, and really, these are Toolbox. These are used by, these cards to get you somewhere. Merlin in last chapter, by the way. And even Bedivere, this one. Let's say that's Bedivere. Even Bedivere fits in this category. Like, you can only use one effect of the Bedivere while he's face up. That's not limited to Bedivere though, so you can only use his effect once while he's face up. Which is cool, but you're not going to keep him on the field long. You're probably going to bring him back later if you need it. You can, of course, the effect on summon you can use with multiple, but which is why I said you could run brothers and 2 of them. And normal brothers effect bring out 2 Bedwiers and send 2 noble arms to the grave. But what are you going to do from there? I mean, you can go into the rank 4 and get 2 back, but it's more of a setup for round table, to be honest. Like, you normal summon him. Send one to the grave, not round table, last chapter. Send one to the grave, he gets destroyed next turn, last chapter, him and put that on him, send another one to the grave, and then start doing something. But even still, if I started my hand with 2 copies of this, what am I going to do? And it's really important. Almost none of these cards here, if I start my hand with more than 1, are going to get me somewhere. Arguably, Gawain is going to get me somewhere. Arguably, if I keep my cards alive, having 2 Drustin out is going to say, haha, you can't do much. 2 round table, what? Give some fodder to brothers? Well, 2 Gawains. Like I've already said that. 2 Galahads. Okay, so I can start doing some chains. I can go over the top of him and then sacrifice him and get a Noble Arms and then go back into Gawain and get the other Gawain back. Sorry, Galahad. Use a Gawain on him and get the other one back to my hand and then go on top of him and then keep rinsing and repeating. But, you're not going to be playing the deck like that. It's not about doing that. It's about them all working with each other. And these cards all here don't seem to do it. Arguably, the ones that are more likely out of this are these guys. Bedivere, Gawain, and Dristan. And maybe Gwen, but like I said, opening that, I'm not going to get too far. They can kind of be useful at 2, but again, that's also on the number of normal ones, normal light monsters you'll have on the field, which, he's really more toolbox. He's not useful 75% of the time. And having brothers for the sake of these 2. Brothers is really good, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I don't think I need to go into that anymore. What else have I got to explain about? Okay, so that's all been explained, blah, 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 blah. I've actually had to write this down so I could remember what I had to say. It's been a while since I've had to do that. Okay, so, extra deck. You have High Lancelot, the rank 4 and the rank 5. Artorigus, King of the Noble Knights, and Sacred King. I just call it rank 4, rank 5, or Sacred King. So, Lady is a toolboxy kind of card used. Mainly I used it to change levels or to get another monster summoned out. And some other weird things you can do with it. But it's pained me. And I've had to cut it down to 1 because I've taken the vanilla guy out because he's next to useless. And this guy's probably going to have to go down to 1 as well in the extra deck. This guy's going to stay at 2. He's useful most of the game, especially now with Merlin. Makes them more useful. And this guy goes up to 3. I don't have to explain them being live or not because obviously they're in the extra deck, but I just wanted to quickly say, this guy, especially now with Shade Old matchup and Cliff Wallace being out, not as useful. He has his limits, he has his uses, and he can search absolutely amazingly well, but yeah, with the 1 lady, there's really no point in running, and no way to get banished cards back. Unfortunately, we thought Bedivere would do that, but he doesn't. He's really got to go down to 1, and 1 go-yo. Like I said, this guy will sit at 2, because he's useful most parts of the game, and you'll use him to rank up and rank down with Excalibur. I'm not going to go into the Noble Arms so much today. And this guy, I promise you, with Merlin, you're making the Sacred King so much. So much. You'll be banishing him out with Ector, making him all the time. Yeah, you're going to want to run him at 3. I played some games with Button Masher, and he's like, where's my 3rd Sacred King? Oh shit, I'm not running it. I'm like, oh, it showed me 2 Castels. I'm like, well, I told you running 3 of that's actually going to be useful. And to be honest, the amount of times you're going to go into things that aren't Noble Knights from your extra deck is going to be very, very low. So, that's probably about it for now, guys. I'm not going to go too much into the Noble Arms. They're pretty much the same, minus Gwen's now down to 1. I just want to explain to you the usefulness of the cards that are live, interactive cards, Toolbox, and Limited are dead. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hopefully it's a bit enlightening too. Don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe. and I'll see you guys later. Dragnartha out.